Good evening and welcome to episode 100 of Don't Talk TV. We've got a very special episode, as I've been saying for the last couple of weeks. We're doing a live stream. We've done live streams before when we were in Ottawa, but this is the first time doing a live stream with guests. As I've mentioned, our guests are Maxime Bernier and Viva Frei, so it's going to be a fantastic show. Get ready with your questions. We have lots that we can talk about. We could probably talk among ourselves all night, but we want to be responsive to what you want to hear about, so please give us lots of questions. Good evening. My name is Nicholas Wansbutter. I'm a lawyer in Stratford, Ontario, Canada, and welcome to Don't Talk TV. And I'm very happy to introduce our two guests for tonight's live stream of episode 100. We have with us Maxime Bernier, former cabinet minister and current leader of the People's Party of Canada. Maxime, thank you very much for being with us and welcome.
Thank you, Nicholas. I'm very pleased to be with you for that 100 show.
And we also have with us David Freiheit, better known as Viva Frei, a YouTube lawyer. And David, or Viva, thank you for joining us.
Thank you. If I look distracted, I was just checking to make sure that you're currently live on Rumble and YouTube. So I hope you are. I haven't been able to find it yet.
Well, I hope we are too, because as we were discussing before the show, I've mentioned a few times, YouTube doesn't like me. They don't want to let me have, paid chats anyway. So Rumble is the place to go so that you can give us Rumble rants if you want to have a message highlighted. We're also live on Facebook. So let's just get right into it. So I know the first question that I got when I was advertising that we were doing this show and mentioning who the guests were, and it's something that comes up frequently. So I think we're just going to have to dive into and do it. People are coming to me. There's all this hype over Pierre Poilievre running for the leadership of the Conservative Party of Canada. So people are saying to me, like, well, shouldn't we all just, to paraphrase, shouldn't we all just dump the People's Party of Canada and throw all our support behind Pierre Poilievre? So, Maxime, I'm going to throw that to you first, because I think you're going to have the most relevant thoughts on why you're not just closing up shop and heading back to the Conservative Party of Canada.
Yeah, so first, I know Pierre Poilievre. I was with him in the Conservative Party of Canada for a couple of years, and Pierre is a good guy. But the problem is, like I said 3 years ago, the Conservative Party of Canada is intellectually and morally corrupt. And if you don't have any proof of that, I think every day they are giving more example of that. They're only conservative in the name. So if you want to know what Pierre Poilievre believes, go on his website, Pierre4PM, and go also on the People's Party of Canada website, peoplespartyofcanada.ca. Read Pierre Poilievre's platform and read our platform. Pierre, it's all about buzzwords and slogan, and there's no policies there. So, for example, Pierre is saying that he will solve the housing challenges that we have in Canada with prices going up. What is his solution? More government, more spending. If you are a conservative, you must believe in a smaller government in Ottawa that will respect our Constitution and respect taxpayers and don't interfere in provincial jurisdictions. What he wants to do is to force municipalities and provinces to change their zoning regulations. That's a provincial matters. That's the best way to address that is to speak to your mayor, to speak to your local politicians. The problem is not the supply of housing. The problem is the demand. And if you want to solve that and having the prices going down, you need to have fewer people in Canada. That's the logic. And actually, the finance minister, Minister Freeland, said that in a video that it's a mathematic. The more people we have in Canada, the more pressure on housing prices. And so the way to solve that is to have fewer people. But at the same time, the Liberals government and also Pierre Poilievre and the Conservative, they're always for more and more and more immigration. They are for mass immigration. So if you want to solve that problem, you need to have fewer immigrants and economic immigrants, not 450,000 a year like the Liberals will have this year, and the Conservatives agree with that. So Pierre, it's all about buzzword on housing. Same thing about inflation. You know, if you want to tackle inflation, the first thing that you can do as the federal government is to end the cartel in supply management, poultry, eggs, and milk. Canadians are paying twice the price if you compare that with the US for milk, poultry, and eggs. If you're serious about that and you're real conservatives, you will abolish that cartel, that supply management cartel in Canada. Pierre Poilievre won't do that. If you're serious about inflation, you will ask the Bank of Canada to forget the 2% inflation target that they have. Actually, the inflation in Canada, it's more than 7.8%. That's the official rate. But if you're serious, inflation is bad. Inflation is a hidden tax, a real tax, an indirect tax that everybody is paying now. You need to ask the Bank of Canada to have a zero inflation target. That's the proposal of the People's Party of Canada. So, Pierre, it's about buzzwords and slogan, but he's not a real conservative, and we'll see what will happen. Maybe he will be the leader of the Conservative Party of Canada. Maybe he won't be. But for us, it's the same battle. We need to do politics differently. We need to fight for what we believe openly with passion and conviction. That's what I did. Pierre is speaking about freedom right now. But where was he the last 2 years when, we had a government in Ottawa and in every province that did not respect our constitutions, and Pierre was not there. He was asking for more vaccine. He was not against the Trudeau government with these draconian vaccine passport and draconian measures. Actually, I cannot travel across this country because I'm not vaccinated. For Pierre Poilievre and the Conservative, that's okay. So it's easy to speak about freedom, but you must walk the talk. And I want to tell you that I'm serious about it. I was in jail in Manitoba because, I was fighting for your freedom, for my freedom, and for getting back that country. So what I'm saying and what I'm doing, I said the same thing the last 15 years. So, and I won't change, and the PPC won't change. So if you want to have a real change in this country, you must support the PPC. This is a young party from 0% in 2018 to 1.6% in 2019 to 5% at the last general election. And the next election we'll see. But we need to vote for what we believe in, and we need to stop to vote against something.
Nicholas, I'll just say one thing. Pierre Poilievre, he did, he was good as, I guess, the only opposition member, and he had some good sound bites. He grilled Justin Trudeau. But people are saying, look, if Pierre Poilievre is elected the leader of the Conservative Party, would you tell people to vote Conservative? It's the better alternative. And I'm saying, you don't vote on the promise of change. You vote to reward the change that they have, in fact, done. Or you don't vote because they haven't actually affected any change whatsoever. The Liberal Party, the Conservative Party, is it's conservative light, and they've done nothing but have some good sound bites, and they've done nothing but, when it became popular, to go against some of these draconian measures. But when these draconian measures were being implemented, O'Toole's Conservative Party supported them, just less of them. And so the idea that you vote for Poilievre and the Conservatives now because they promised to do, to fight, and they promised to take positions which, up until now they have not been taking, they've got to earn the vote and not, promise to earn the vote. And that's it. It's the party is going to take some time to heal and prove their integrity. But up until now, I'll never tell anyone who to vote for, but I'll certainly never tell them to vote for the Conservative because it's the lesser of the evils compared to Justin Trudeau.
I mean, even if Pierre Poilievre was everything that people think he is, if he's the great savior of conservatism, even if he were all that, I mean, would one man even be able to change the Conservative Party, or are there too many people that are just deeply entrenched in the overall structure of the party that the party itself just can't be moved
Maxime,
far in another direction?
Who is the Conservative MP who apologized for her privilege? She had that ridiculous tweet.
Yeah, that was Michelle Rempel. Michelle Rempel. She said that, sorry, I'm white and I'm privileged, but the Conservative Party is not conservative, and I don't know what will happen with that party after that leadership contest. But I can tell you what will happen with the People's Party. We will stay the same. Our platform that we had at the last general election was the same one at the first election, and it will be the same one at the next election, because we are doing politics based on principles, 4 principles: individual freedom, personal responsibility, respect, and fairness. And all our policies are in line with these 4 principles. So we don't have a new platform at every election because we did some polling and focus group and that is popular and we must speak about that. No, we believe, sorry for people that don't believe like us, what we believe that we have the best ideas, the best vision for this country, for a prosperous and freer country. And we believe that the more we speak about that, the more support we will have. And if you look at the past, I think, we achieved something from 0 to 5%. And next time we will grow. So that's the way we are doing politics, by speaking about the real issues with a real solution for each issue.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think that's an important point, is that stability that you point out, Maxime. And that's to me as a voter, I know if I vote People's Party of Canada, I'm going to be voting for the same thing all the time. Whereas with the Conservative Party of Canada, you never know. Maybe it'll be okay this time, but then it changes in a few years.
Nicholas, can you I hope everyone appreciates the so-called Conservative Party. And I don't consider these to be conservative values. I consider them to be constitutional values. They support the Paris Accord. They support a carbon tax. They supported vaccine passports. They supported these draconian measures when they thought it was popular to support them going into an election. And then you have Michelle Rempel. Apologize. The amazing thing about that tweet, for anybody who hasn't read it, she apologizes for her privilege her privilege, while simultaneously purporting to be a victim as well. I mean, it was the most delusional tweet that she apologizes for being a white woman. She has privilege, but she's a woman in a male-dominated world, so she's still a victim. So it's this like tug of war, a spiritual tug of war, that she says, I'm privileged, but I'm also a victim, so I get to claim both at the same time. And this is somehow representative of the Conservative Party. It's liberal 2.0, and liberal light, I should say. And it's a great, even if you had an ultimate savior of the Conservative Party, I don't think they would be able to affect any change. That party, as far as I'm concerned, it's not compromised. It's just, it's ethically compromised.
Well, I think
one of the chats is Pierre Poilievre WEF. He's until proof to the contrary, Pierre Poilievre is not on the WEF website.
Well, apparently, I think he may have been on it at one point, but apparently the WF, they'll randomly put people up there, even though they're not actually members of the WF. They'll just put them on because this is some person who's an up and coming leader, and they want to associate themselves with that person somehow. But I just also see it as, well, again, I go back to that stability. Maxime, what you're talking about, the PPC is going to stay the same. I mean, look at how much the Conservative Party has changed. I mean, can you even, I don't think the current party is even recognizable compared to what it was when you were a member of the Conservative Party, like when Harper was the Prime Minister.
Yeah, the problem with the Conservative Party of Canada right now is their only goal is to be in government, but they will tell you what they want what you want to hear to be able to have your support. And actually, Pierre Poilievre is doing a good job by telling you what you want to hear. People in Western Canada want pipelines, and Pierre said, yeah, I'm going to build pipeline to the east, to the west, to the north, everywhere. But the question is, how will you do that? And, I was with the Harper government, and Stephen Harper also said that we will build pipelines, and we were not able to do it. We didn't do it. We, as a conservative government, so Poilievre think he will do it. The only way to be able to build a pipeline in Canada is to use the Constitution, Section 9210 in our Constitution, a national infrastructure. Like we used that clause more than 100 times since Confederation to build national infrastructure in this country. And if you use that clause in the Constitution, the federal government will have the full jurisdiction, the full responsibility, and the federal government will be able to, sorry about that word, impose a pipeline on provinces that don't want a pipeline. So I said that, and I will always say it. Yes, we need to use that clause. It's too important for the prosperity of this country, but also for the unity of this country. So when you ask Pierre Poilievre, how will you be able to build pipelines? He doesn't have any answer because it's just a buzzword, and he knows that in Western Canada they want pipelines, but he doesn't have the solution. The solution is to be direct and tell the population, yes, we are able to do that. We have a great constitution. We can use that section in the constitution. The way to do that is when you have a project, you just have to pass a legislation in Canada saying that pipeline is for the national, what is the word in the constitution, 9210, a national important infrastructure, something like that. When you use that sentence in that legislation, you have the full authority on that infrastructure. So that's a way to be able to have pipelines in this country. So answering your question, Nicolas, they are saying everything, but they don't want to put the real solution there because some people in Quebec won't like it. Some people in BC won't like it. So they are pandering. That's the way they're doing politics. They're pandering to every special interest group, try to have their support. For us, we're doing politics for all Canadians, and we don't try to pander. We don't do that kind of politics. And if you like what we are saying, I hope you'll support us. If you don't like, don't vote for us. That's easy like that.
All right,
Maxime is running in Quebec talking about, revisiting equalization payments. If you need a harder evidence that Maxime is an individual who runs on principles and not what's popular in Beauce, Quebec, for example, that's probably the prime example.
Or that and going to jail for his beliefs. That takes some principle too. But Maxime, we got a question here from Kavana Wilson Rigo. She's Kavana, thank you for the comment or the question. She's a member of the unvaccinated Canadians, the untouchable class in our society, and she'd like to know if the People's Party of Canada can help to end the federal travel mandates.
Yes, we can. We can do that in two ways. First, speaking against that, and I did that the last 2 years, and I will always speak against that. It's unconstitutional, illegal, immoral, unethical. There's no reason to have, a vaccine passport for Canadian travelers. That's what we believe in. We need to fight against that. The other thing that we are doing, and I'm doing that personally with the Justice Center for Constitutional Freedoms, to fight these mandates in the court. And I will be in the court in the beginning of September with also other people like Brian Petford, a former premier of Newfoundland, and he was part of the redaction of the Charter of Rights when he was in power in Newfoundland. And so he's fighting that also. So we will be in court. We will fight that. And I believe that if we have a good judge that understands the Constitution, we will win that. If not, I believe that we'll appeal that decision. But the way to fight these mandates, there's two ways. In the public opinion, try to convince the public opinion that it is bad, because as you know, these traditional politicians are doing politics by survey and polling. And if we can increase the support against these mandates, that will help. And that, we just need to show that we have a trend and more people are coming on our side. Politicians that are in power, in government, they're looking at poll every day. And if they see a trend that they don't like, they will react. So we are doing that. But the other battle, it's the battle in the court. And I'm doing that with the Justice Center.
And although we're going to have to wait until 2025 most likely before we can have another election, but of course if some People's Party of Canada members were elected, then you'd have even more of a platform. And I mean, I think probably a best case scenario would be if you had a minority conservative government that had to rely on People's Party support. That would force them to. Although, or would the PPC work with the Conservative Party in that regard?
Yeah, we will support any political party that is fighting for freedom. We have a platform. If another political party wants our support, if it's in line with our platform, with what we said, we will support that. You just had a question from somebody. How can you be in government? I just want to let you know that we are, yes, a young political party, but we are growing very fast and it's going very well. But also, you don't need to be in government to have some impact in politics. I will give you the example of Preston Manning and the Reform Party. Preston Manning was a principled politician and he was fighting for a balanced budget every day in the House. Preston Manning was the official opposition. In government at that time, you had Jean Chrétien and Paul Martin as the finance minister. But because of Preston Manning was speaking about fiscal, for the federal government to be fiscally responsible and always arguing for a balanced budget and lower taxes, Martin and Trudeau were able to balance the budget. And yes, they did it. They balanced the budget. They were conservative, like a conservative government. So Preston Manning was able to influence, and because of him, he was able, and we were able to have 10 years of a balanced budget in this country with a fiscally responsible government. So look at the NDP right now. The NDP, they are not in power, but because of the support that they're giving to Trudeau, their policies are discussed right now, and we may have more socialism in this country because of that. So the impact of the People's Party, as soon as we'll have some candidates elected, we can have an impact because we will always fight for what we said, for what we believe, in line with our principles, and we will defend the Western civilization values. So yes, we can have an impact if we are not in government. And I don't want to tell you that I'll be prime minister after the next election. That won't happen. But I can tell you that, yes, we will have a freedom voice in parliament, and we will do that fight. And the more support we'll have, the more reform we will be able to influence in our country.
Well, and a lot of people ask me, or even that question asking you, when will the People's Party of Canada form a government? I mean, part of the answer to that question is to the people as well, right? I mean, Maxime, I mean, we thank you for all the hard work you're doing and the hard work that the party is doing, but there's also a role for the individual people as well. I mean, you can see in the United States right now, I think there's a huge mobilization of voters going on because people are so frustrated with what's going on with the Biden government. So there's people, just everyday people, not party members, going out, getting people. Now, you don't need to register to vote for Canada like you do in the US, but they're getting people registered and getting people fired up, getting people out to vote. I think that's for people who are concerned about the direction Canada's going. I think that's something they should really consider. Is don't just sit back and wait for Maxime Bernier to get the People's Party of Canada elected. If each person just convinced 5 of their friends, especially people who don't vote or who are kind of on the fence, to like, hey, go out and vote next time, I think that could make a difference. But circling back to the lawsuit, I'm going to ask Viva this question, but I'm going to preface my question with another question. Firstly, Viva, are you still a member in good standing with the Law Society of Ontario?
No, I'm a member in good standing of the Law Society of Quebec. I'm
right.
Civil attorney.
Okay, so, but you're still a member.
I just paid my $2,600 for a license, which I barely use at all, but still in good standing. And I take pride in that. But let me just say one thing about what Maxime said. Get out there and change public opinion. Maxime's taking it to the courts. I'll take it to the courts if I'm compelled to. If I get caught up in an incident, I'll take it to the courts. I'm not acting as counsel in any of these lawsuits. I think I would be more of a liability right now, given my social media presence, than an asset as representative. But when I ran with the People's Party, I had an absolute outrageous thought that I could actually win. But my main objective was to normalize the party, normalize the discussion, and sensitize people to what the fact that what's going on, it's unacceptable in a free society. And you have people after a year, 2 years of being beaten down with this fear porn, incessant media, government-funded media news, starting to think, yeah, it's normal that we have a curfew. No, you have that discussion and you make people understand it's not normal, it's not acceptable, and you get people to put the social pressure on the politicians to change the opinion of the people around you. This is not normal in a free society, and then you affect change from the bottom up. I think it was Breitbart who said politics is downstream from culture. That's one of the aspects of this battle, has to be changing minds and changing souls. Maxime's going to take his chance in the courts. I'm not optimistic. The courts and the government and the experts seem to be a trifecta of patting each other on the back, but we'll see. Maybe it will come through in the courts, because none of this is constitutionally acceptable, in my opinion. But you've got to make people appreciate that and put pressure on the politicians from the bottom up, and then hope the courts do something.
Yeah. Well, I was going to ask you for what you thought the courts were, what the chances were in the courts. You've already answered that.
I'm skeptical. I mean, I've seen you see. Can you believe the federal courts did not conclude, although it was on an injunctive basis, so the threshold and criteria is a little bit different. There's a presumption of constitutionality, but a judge says that a curfew doesn't violate your charter rights. A judge says that being whisked off to a government detention center, they call it a quarantine hotel, that doesn't violate your constitutional rights. It's not that they said it violates them, but it's justified under Section 1. They didn't even get there. They said it doesn't violate your charter rights to be detained at a government facility for 3 days, and you have to pay for it. They did say it violated your rights not to be deprived of counsel, but not to be whisked off to an unidentified location of something they call a quarantine hotel. That's the lower courts on injunctive levels. Maybe as the evidence comes in and you get to the higher courts, and hopefully the Supreme Court will get it right. But I've lost a little bit of faith.
Well, it makes one wonder, what on earth does the right to life, liberty, and security of the person mean if it doesn't mean the right to not just get whisked off to
the right not to be arbitrarily detained, unlawful search and seizure, life, liberty, mobility rights. I mean, no, it's not that. Yes, of course it violates your rights. You're being forcibly detained in a government quarantine hotel for 3 days. Of course it does, but it's justified under the emergency. The federal court judge said it doesn't violate your charter rights. The Quebec court here said curfew does not violate your charter rights. It's a mild inconvenience.
Well, that's and then even the decisions where they do find that there's a breach, for example, the recent Ontario versus Trinity Bible Chapel, and then there was also the case in Manitoba. The judges said, well, it is a violation of the rights, but it's saved under Section 1. And essentially the Section 1 argument was, well, I've heard some very compelling medical evidence from the applicants, but at the end of the day, we have to exercise judicial humility, and we can't question the government experts. That's what Justice Joyal said in Manitoba. He essentially said, I can't question the government experts. I can't second guess them. So therefore, I can't strike down any of these laws, which was really disappointing because I'll share a little bit of personal knowledge. I actually know Justice Joyal because I started my career in Manitoba. I thought he was a fantastic judge when I appeared in front of him, and he had a reputation for being very in favor of people's rights, very knowledgeable, knowing about the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. And when I heard he had the case, I thought, okay, here's our chance. If they Justice Joyal of the judges in Manitoba, I know that's the one that I'd want to hear this case, and then we still got the ruling. So it's disappointing, but in keeping with the rules of professional conduct, I'll express optimism that the higher courts will get things right. So we have a question coming in here before I move on to the next of my prepared topics from JB. Thanks for the question. Is it possible to break the coalition between the NDP and the Liberals? 3 more years of Trudeau is a horrific prospect.
But, in a parliamentary system, what Trudeau and the NDP are doing, it's okay. It's legal. It's a kind of a coalition. We had that before in other government. For example, at the provincial level in BC, we had the NDP that had a deal with the Green. So it's happening. So to break that, I don't know. If you put a lot of pressure to Trudeau not to be too socialist, and maybe a majority of the population don't like what Trudeau is doing, maybe that can be a way to break that coalition. But it would be very difficult. They had an agreement. They don't want an election. They don't want an election because they're not ready for an election. Actually, the NDP don't have a lot of money in the bank, and they're not so popular right now. And Trudeau wants another 3 years because maybe he won't be the leader at the next general election. We don't know that, but there's no way. We need to put more pressure on the government and being a real opposition. And speaking about real opposition, like Viva just said, the Conservative Party of Canada was not a real opposition the last 2 years. We just had an official opposition, but we didn't have a real opposition in Parliament. We at the PPC, we were the only real opposition for the last 2 years. So we need to have a party. We need to be able to fight for what we believe. And if we change the public opinion, maybe Trudeau and the NDP will think twice before imposing more socialism in Canada.
If I can go on a minor rant, someone in the chat said Viva's black pill is showing. No, this is the red pill, and I think it's going to be the white pill that comes out of this, that there will be social change. But Jagmeet Singh partners up with Trudeau. The Jagmeet Singh, who for the last 3 years, at the very least 2 years, has called Justin Trudeau dangerous, divisive, incompetent, corrupt, unethical. He just puts out a tweet now saying, literally now, a 1-minute rambling, incoherent video on YouTube saying how the Liberals and the Conservatives have rigged the system. This guy, Jagmeet Singh, I said it when I was running for office with the PPC. Anybody voting for him thinking it was a protest vote to the Liberals were voting for a different bird of the same feather. Jagmeet knows that he's not popular, like Maxime says. They don't want to go to an election because I think both of those two people are ousted as leaders of the party. And so his option is to form a coalition with someone who he has called dangerous, incompetent, unethical, corrupt. And someone he's accused of rigging the system. These, and I said, Jagmeet is only interested in power in as much as Justin Trudeau is. He's just never had it. And this is his way of going after it. And at the very least, if not having it, sharing it. But people are learning now what the NDP is about. They talk as good of a game as the Conservatives, and then they actually team up with the party they have accused of rigging the system. It can only make sense in a clown world because it doesn't make sense. But people have seen it now. And I think Jagmeet Singh's true colors are coming out now for everyone to see. So how do you get to another election? I don't know. I think what Justin Trudeau is doing is going to be so darn unpopular, even the NDP is going to have to distance themselves from it. But we'll see.
Well,
yeah.
What do you think? What do you think is on tap that'll be so unpopular that even NDP supporters won't like it?
I don't know. I would have said that the freezing of bank accounts and bringing in a militarized police to break up a protest would have been enough, but that happened before they joined forces. So
yeah,
who knows?
that clearly didn't upset them. I mean, I guess that's part of the problem. Is I think the NDP have proved themselves to not be this principled opposition that they present themselves as. And I'll admit, I even kind of bought into that. I thought, well, the NDP are far left, but they at least are kind of principled far left versus the Liberals, who are, I don't know, in my view, they're just kind of leftists who do kind of whatever they want, though, like not from a principled or neoliberal. I don't know what you'd even call them. I mean, because normally you wouldn't expect liberals to be the ones, crushing peaceful protests with militarized police or locking people in their houses, or usually they're the ones saying, oh, you can do whatever you want, my body, my choice.
Criminal reform. You got to reform the criminal justice system unless you have political prisoners on mischief charges. Throw the book at them then and keep them in jail for months on end.
Right. Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, and just to confirm what we're talking about there, we were talking about that just before the show about Viva, you were just telling me that Pat King, I know he was having a bail review because he was denied bail at the first instance. He was having a bail review, which is like an appeal of bail. And then I know there was some weird thing that happened during the hearing where they had to suddenly close it down. Some indication that his lawyer's laptop may have been hacked while they're trying to do the bail hearing. But now I think you said he's appearing. Is it later this week or next week?
Next week to reschedule the finale of his hearing. And in the meantime, in the last 2 months, they found new charges to slap against him. And people, Pat King has had some issues in maintaining counsel, so he's been going through counsel, which will complicate things. But I mean, even Tamara Lich was in jail for 2.5 weeks. Initially denied bail on mischief charges, and this is who Jagmeet Singh, the man of the people. This is who he's teamed up with.
And I mean, and just to put some context for viewers from my perspective as a criminal defense lawyer, I mean, I do bail hearings all the time. I do them more than I'd like to because you have to drop everything and go and do it. But I mean, for people without prior criminal records to be denied bail on a mischief charge is, I mean, it's preposterous if you look at what sorts of things people get out on bail for on a regular basis. I mean, I routinely am getting people out on bail who have multiple prior convictions for failing to attend court, failing to follow bail, for committing crimes similar to the one that they're accused of. And we're talking serious crimes: possession of controlled substances for the purpose of trafficking, like fentanyl. I mean, I think I got a guy out not too long ago. He literally had enough fentanyl, allegedly had enough fentanyl in his possession to kill the entire population of Stratford, where I practice. If that was equally distributed to every person in the city and they all took it at once, they'd all die of overdose. I mean, those allegations are still worthy of judicial interim release because of the presumption of innocence and the right to bail. In the context of that's how our system functions, how on earth can people with no prior criminal records be detained for a mischief charge? And on the basis of a mischief that is long over, that like the truckers are all gone, there's no way that even if they wanted to, that they could continue the alleged offense, which I don't think was an offense to begin with.
So what you are saying, Nicolas, it was and it is political repression. That's only that. Political repression in Canada in 2022. These people are freedom fighters and they did nothing wrong. A protest, a peaceful protest. Viva, you were there. I was there also. That was fun. That was, people were happy to be there because they knew that the end of these draconian measures will end soon. And they knew that what they're doing was part of putting pressure on the government, and they were successful. So that is only political repression.
For clarification, don't want any bank accounts frozen. I was there documenting it specifically because I had heard this violent extremist protest, and I go down there to see what's going on, this violent, criminal, unlawful protest. And you get down there and you saw what was going on. Nothing of the sort. But the idea, the individual who ran into 4 protesters in Winnipeg let out on bail. Tamara Litch was arrested on 4 mischief-related charges. Pat King, one of them was obstructing police, advising to breach a court order, which is called contempt, and mischief charges, still locked up. You had Chris Barber, I think was his name.
Yeah,
it's inconceivable that the system can work this way, and you get into this full-on Kafka-esque 1984. The judges determining the bail say it would undermine faith in the judicial system to release these people pending trial. These people are legally innocent until proven guilty, being detained for, in some cases, longer than the charge, if convicted, could entail. I mean, mischief could be a serious charge. There's felony, there's indictable offense and summary conviction. But I mean, it's right. When you see who's let out of jail and who's kept in jail, this is political persecution under Justin Trudeau, who was embarrassed at this peaceful protest that lasted for weeks, that turned Canada into a laughingstock internationally, and this is his retribution on those who participated in it.
Yeah, well,
and we forgot Randy Hillier also.
Yeah,
what they did to Randy. They put charges against him. I was with him. He did nothing wrong, but that was another example of the authoritarian government and repression that Trudeau is doing against his political opponents.
Well, Maxime, I'm just hoping that they don't come for you next for aiding and abetting by giving some pancakes to people.
Actually, I called Randy after all that, and he said, you may be the next one, Maxime, and say, bring it. I'll fight that. If they want me to be in court, I'll be in that court and I'll fight. But it's so crazy. It's so un-Canadian. Yes, you're right, Viva, when you said it. That was laughable all around the world. And Trudeau was in Europe at that time speaking about democracy and freedom and rights. That was laughable.
But they actually have an opposition in the European Parliament, so he got a little bit. I don't know if he was expecting that. He actually got called out in the European Parliament in a way he's never been called out in the Canadian Parliament.
I put together a 4-minute montage of it. Was Christian Anderson and 3 others lambasting Trudeau. I just spliced together their unedited interviews. I think it got like 350,000 views on my second channel. He goes, Justin Trudeau, to Europe to lecture a 3/4 empty parliament because the parliamentarians left out of protest. And what do you have the CBC reporting? That he got a standing ovation. And the CBC got so lambasted for that interpretation of events that they had to, tone it down to a warm welcome. It's but yeah, it was an international embarrassment, from Fox News to Steve Bannon's War Room to RT, everywhere. And when petty tyrants get embarrassed, they lash out, and this is how it's occurred. It's lashing out at these people who are the symbols of this protest, and throw the full book at them.
Although in terms of the political persecution, I mean, just thinking of how prosecutors' offices work in the judiciary, I don't think, I suppose anything's possible. I don't think the Prime Minister's office actually called up the judge and said, hey, you better not let these people out on bail. Now, there may be some marching orders going down through the prosecutors' offices because they do take direction from politicians. But in terms of the judges, I mean, this is something that I have people a lot of times accusing our judiciary of corruption. I still don't think our judiciary is corrupt. Like, I don't think people are paying them off. I actually don't think Prime Minister Trudeau has a secret back line to the Superior Court of Justice telling them what their decision should be. But I think this comes back to the cultural thing. I don't know if it's a Breitbart quote. Maybe it is. I associate it with Mark Steyn. That's who I got the quote from, of politics is downstream of culture, but maybe he got it from Breitbart. But I think that's part of it. Is my impression in reading these decisions is that the judges haven't been bought off or threatened, South American style. They just, I don't know, maybe by virtue of how our judiciary works, how they're kind of separate from society, they just see what CBC says and they just figure, well, that's reality. What these people are saying is reality isn't reality. So,
but Nicolas, my take on that is very simple. These judges are human, and when you are in a pandemic and you have 75% of the population that is asking for more lockdowns, more curfew. That was the case in Montreal when that happened. As a judge, you need to have some courage to go against the public opinion and be the first one that is saying to the government that what you're doing, it's unconstitutional and illegal. These judges, yes, are humans. They're listening to the CBC, to the radio station, and they don't want to be, part of that 15% that people are saying they're conspiracy terrorists and they're racist and things like that. They want to be on the right side, and the right side at that time was with 75% of the population and saying, these draconian measures are okay. But I'm a little bit more optimistic for the future because we don't have any emergency right now. That's, we, after 2 years, the fear was very efficient, but now it's not. And if you do a poll or a survey, you'll see that more people are fed up and tired with that. And I believe that these judges will come and be a real judge looking at the law and the Constitution. And I hope, maybe I'm too optimistic, but I'm hoping that the decision that we'll have in a couple of months will be better than the decision that we had in the middle of that pandemic.
And Nicholas, just so I can clarify something, because you make the point. I don't think Justin Trudeau is phoning up people or placing orders that go down at all. I don't think there's any corruption in any legal or ethical sense. What I think there is this climate, this expectation of sorts, this frenzy. You have CBC, you have CTV, you have all Canadian government subsidized media saying this was an occupation. There were Nazi flags. There were Confederate flags. You have the judges reading this. You have the judges reading that the citizens of Ottawa felt scared, were outraged. And so it's a vicious circle. It's a vortex of sorts where, the judges get caught up in the social expectation, the social environment as much as anybody else. So it's not corruption in the technical sense at all. And there's no but. It's this frenzy where on my channel, when we talk about this with Robert Barnes, going to the January 6th events, where if January 6th was an insurrection, they were there to take down the government. They were there, in theory, if you buy into that, effectively targeting the judges who are now the judges involved in sentencing these individuals. It's sort of the same thing, mutatis mutandis, to Ottawa, where it was an insurrection. They were there to overthrow the government, and that, the judges were as much, in this theory, an object of that protest as the government itself. And so now it's they feel that the pressure is, the social expectation is, these people risked our democracy and we need to dole out justice, even if it's an injustice. And so I think it's that type of climate, and not what people think overt Trudeau calling them up and saying, don't let her out. I don't think it's that. It's even more dangerous than that, because it's an ecosystem of its own that generates this result based on what people think are the expectations that everybody wants, fueled in part by government subsidized media.
Yeah, I think that's a very good way of summing it up. But I saw a good question. Okay, good. It's back up. We've got my volunteer PR guy Richard on the ball here. So a question from Mark is, do you think Canada will move towards a republic? Trudeau's blatant disregard for the charter could be the spark. So I think it's an interesting question. And for the record, I'm in principle vehemently monarchist, but that said, we don't really have a monarchy, because the monarch, the head of state, never ever exercises any power. So we're in a situation where really all power is vested in the office of the prime minister, and I think that's too much power for one person to have. You need some checks and balances. So I don't. What do you think? Is there any chance? Is that something that might happen? Is it something that should happen? I don't know. Maxime, what do you think?
I believe that it would be very difficult to change the system. I believe that it would be better if we can have another electoral system, more proportional, with 5% of the vote that we had at the last election. If we had a proportional system at that time, we may be able to have 5 or 20 candidates elected, but we don't have that system. So changing the system, it's a little bit more difficult. I don't believe that in a near term, in a short term, that we can be a republic. I believe that we have a system that is not perfect, but and that's why I'm doing politics. I believe that I can be elected. I believe that we can have a huge influence in politics in Canada. I believe that maybe a day I can be prime minister, but I don't need to be prime minister to be the change in this country if we have a lot of support. We can be the official opposition. We can have a minority government, and we can have a kind of an agreement with that minority government to support for more freedom and a smaller government. So we don't know what can happen in the future, but I don't believe that we'll have a change of our electoral system soon.
Okay. Viva, what do you think?
I'm not sure I could answer the question. All I can say now is I much better understand the Wexit movement than I ever did before. I don't know that you'll go to a republic. You might have provinces moving to leave the federation, and I got to tell you, seeing the way the federal government has been treating Canadians and treating the charter, I could revisit supporting that idea, and I certainly understand how the West says we need to. I understand them saying now we want to get out of this federation because it's the East that seems to dictate for the rest of Canada.
Is it though? I mean, Jason Kenney implemented lockdowns aplenty. Manitoba had the worst lockdown. Well, maybe Quebec had the worst lockdowns. It's
true.
Kind of sad to be having that debate, especially since I'm a Manitoban. To think that my home province would be vying, with anyone else for the most draconian COVID lockdown.
I agree with Viva also on that. Western Canadians actually right now don't have a good deal with the federal government, with that federation. You have a lot of policies that are that the federal government is imposing and to provinces. The fact that we don't have pipelines, like I said, the fact that the equalization is unfair and Alberta is paying for other provinces. We must change that formula to be fair for every province. The Western alienation is there, and it's sad that we at the PPC are the only national political party that is speaking about that and have a solution for that. And the solution is a smaller government in Ottawa that will respect provincial jurisdiction. So if in Alberta they want to have their caisse de dépôt, they must be able to have that. Their pension fund, they must be able to have that. Their own police force, they must be able to have that. If they want to select their immigration, they must be able to have that also. So we need to have a smaller government in Ottawa, and that's why every region in this country are not the same. The culture in Quebec is different from the culture in Alberta or in Newfoundland. You need to have a radical decentralization in Canada in line with the Constitution, and that's the only way to keep Western Canadians and Alberta in the Confederation. If you don't do that, I believe that movement, independentist movement in Alberta, when you have 30% of the population that are saying, we don't like the deal that we have right now, we are looking to separate, I believe that it is irresponsible when you have leaders from the liberal or the conservative that are not speaking and giving an answer to that Western alienation. They don't want to talk about that because it's not popular, and they will lose vote in Eastern Canada. We are speaking about that. So you're right, Viva. I don't know what will happen in a couple of years, but I understand Western Canadians that they're not happy with the situation right now because we have in Ottawa a government that is interfering in provincial jurisdictions.
And Nicholas, you are right about one thing, is that, they had pretty draconian lockdowns in Manitoba, Alberta as well. They were locking up Artur Pawlowski. James Coates. There was the other pastor, I forget his name right now. But I got to tell you one thing. I think those moves were much more unpopular with the Albertan and Manitoban citizens than what François Legault was doing here in Quebec. In Quebec, people wanted it. People weren't protesting it, and those who did protest it, they were deemed to be a fringe minority with unacceptable views. I think the madness at the government, provincial and federal level is different than the sentiment among the citizens. Manitobans and out west, they didn't want this. Maybe British Columbia, more like Quebec. But despite what the politicians did, I don't think the people put up with it or tolerated it the way we did in Ontario and Quebec. But it's the idea that Justin Trudeau was reelected with his minority government. You can blame it on Quebec and Ontario alone. Well, and that dictates culture and politics for the rest of Canada. And it's radically different than culture and politics west of Ontario.
Although in fairness, it's not even Ontario. Really, it's just the GTA. Because if you look at an electoral map, you've got like this little blob of red over Toronto, and then the rest of Ontario is mostly
that covers blue. 5 million people. So I mean, that's
well, it's 5 million people, but it does still also have a disproportionate number of ridings, even for the amount of population it has, which is a whole other problem we have. But I think that. I don't think becoming a republic is really going to change much. Let's say we even had a republic during all this. All that means is, okay, in theory, we'd have a president who maybe, but would they really have different views? I think it comes back to the whole culture preceding politics. You can have the best system in the world. You still need a good culture, or a bad culture is going to undo the best system. And I think the charter is a good document. It's a good constitution. It's a good set of rights. But as we can see, you can have the best charter written down in the world. If there's no appetite for defending it in the culture, then we have the last 2 years that we just had here in Canada. Now, before I go on, it was just up here a moment ago, a comment from Patrick Doucette, another PPC candidate, asking if we have any comments on Stephen Del Duca, the Liberal choice for Premier of Ontario, promising to ban handguns in Ontario. My first thought is, I didn't even know that Stephen Del Duca was the name of the leader of the Liberal Party of Ontario until I heard it on the news the other day. I think 90% of Ontarians don't know who Stephen Del Duca is, and I think he's going to be, the Liberal Party be a non-issue in the upcoming election. But even if I'm wrong on that, obviously I think it's terrible. My view is, I think more firearms is actually, I'm not saying just indiscriminately giving firearms to people, but I'm just saying solid citizens with no criminal record. There's no good reason to not want them to be allowed to have firearms.
Did this gentleman of politics promise to ban handguns in criminals? I'm curious, because if I have understood the statistics correctly, and I'm fairly certain I have, the vast majority, if not the super majority of gun crimes are not committed with lawfully owned guns. So you can ban handguns. The people who have them are already banned from having them. So congratulations, you've added more laws to resolve a problem that already exists, and it has nothing to do with not having enough laws. This is the subject on which I've changed. I've evolved a little bit. I took the firearm safety course in Quebec. I've got my long arm hunting license. The talk about banning shotguns, the talk about extending the firearm restrictions to however many long arms were in that order in council. When you know which guns are being used to commit crime and they're not lawfully owned in the first place, they're adding laws onto laws which are not even going to scratch the surface of resolving the actual problem.
Really, why don't they just make murder illegal? Wouldn't that just stop all the oh wait, murder already is illegal. But taking firearms and away from lawful owners isn't going to do anything, because lawfully owned handguns, or even handguns that were stolen from lawful owners, aren't involved in crimes. They're almost all smuggled from other places. So maybe you want to stop it, maybe invest in some more. I'm not even sure what you can do at the border to.
Well, what you can do to make sure that people don't commit crimes is you can decrease that likelihood by ensuring that people have good jobs and have not been psychologically tortured for the last 2 years. I mean, you create social problems that lead to crime, and it's not rocket science, and it's not a fear hiding a wish. You look at what's happening in the United States now. You defund the police, you lock people down, you ruin people's lives, you take away people's livelihoods. It's just inevitable that crime goes up, and it's not going up with lawfully owned guns, nor is it going up, from what I understand, by and large, from stolen lawful firearms. They're illegal black market weapons. They're smuggled in. They don't have serial numbers. The people getting them are not going to take the classes anyhow. And you ruin every other aspect of social cohesion that exacerbates these problems. You can create all the laws in the world. You can go full Mexico restrictions on firearms. Check out what the gun crime is like in Mexico. It's either Mexico or Venezuela, I forget which, but toughest gun laws in the world, among the most violent gun crime areas in the world.
I don't have anything to add there. I agree with everything that you said. We have a policy on that, and if people want to know more about the position of the PPC, they can go on our website, People's Party of Canada.ca. They can read our policy. We are for legally gun owner that are respecting the law, that are respecting the Constitution. And actually, if you want to have a gun in Canada, like Viva said, you need to have a course. It's serious, and you need also to be sure and there's a lot of investigation by the police. They're looking at your past. So when you have that right, you must be able to have that right and own a gun if you want. And all these gun laws are not effective. But it's popular if you want to have vote in big cities, in Montreal, Toronto, and in Vancouver. It is popular there. So politicians are pushing these kind of laws.
It blows my mind because they're pushing these laws in Toronto where you have a massive amount of gun crime. It's not committed with lawful firearms. It's not even committed, as far as I understand, with stolen lawful firearms. So in Canada, when I tell people, especially in the States, self-defense is effectively criminalized in Canada. You can't own a firearm for home defense. You can't own pepper spray. You can't own a stun gun. You can't own a pepper ball paintball gun. I mean, the government has effectively criminalized self-defense, criminalized law-abiding citizens from owning weapons, and made everyone totally reliant on calling the police and hoping they get there in time. When I was in Ottawa for the protest, and it's a long story, but I had to call the police not for an emergency. My car got towed and I didn't know where it went, and 311 wasn't picking up. I was literally on a loop on 911. And it wasn't because people were calling in the police because of Randy Hillier. It was because all of the police were apparently, busy doing other things like busting up a protest, and the government is busy investing billions of dollars in other things like vaccine passports and not basic, urgent services. But
as the saying goes, the police are only minutes away when seconds count.
Yeah, and like Tom McDonald said, order food, call the police, see which one arrives first.
Yeah, well, I lost my train of thought. But one thing you were saying there, about making self-defense illegal. I mean, you're not even allowed to own those things in your home. You're not allowed to carry anything with you for the purpose of self-defense. So if you're carrying a baseball bat, you're only allowed to carry it for the purpose of going to play baseball. But if you're carrying it because you're going through a bad part of town and you want to have it just in case, you've now committed a crime, because this isn't legislative. This is through common law. Unfortunately, judges have essentially made up this piece of law that self-defense is a purpose dangerous to the public peace. So if you possess anything for the purpose of self-defense, you are now possessing a weapon for a purpose dangerous to the public peace.
Can your producer bring up Mike the Caveman? I'm allowed to own a bat. I play baseball sometimes. There's an old joke, and there might be some truth to the joke. If you have a baseball bat in the trunk of your car, make sure you have a mitt and a ball as well. So if you just have a baseball bat, it might raise more flags than a baseball bat with a mitt and a ball.
But just going back to firearms, I think both of you have made all the most important points. But I mean, I would I would take it even a step further. Just looking at philosophically from a sovereignty position and the defense of Canada. I mean, even if Canada had a much different economy and a much bigger military, say it was actually funded the way it was supposed to be, say we're like back like at the end of World War II, when Canada, I think, had the third largest army and the fourth largest air force in the world. Even so, Canada is so gigantic relative to its population, it's always going to be extremely difficult to defend our sovereignty. If you actually had a government that wasn't scared of its own law-abiding citizens and didn't have reason to be scared of its law-abiding citizens, having everyone armed is going to guarantee your sovereignty, because no one would ever be able to conquer a country where the entire citizenry are armed and who love their country and don't hate their own government.
Yeah,
it's not much to add to that. It's the people in the States don't appreciate that. Like, yeah, self-defense is basically criminalized in Canada, and it's I mean, it's good, and we're lucky in a sense because we don't have. It's a pretty safe country. Certain cities are different, but I mean that's also changing. It's also changing. We're seeing it in Quebec now.
That's the thing. I mean, how long does it stay that way? Especially with the things you're talking about, and another 3 years of socialism. I mean, we've seen that. How many times have we seen this movie before? In I mean, you know, Venezuela is the first example. I mean, I'm not saying we're going to go to complete Venezuela in 3 years. The point is, though, you can have very prosperous, liberal in terms of like the small L classical sense, a democracy country that can, in a fairly short period of time, descend into a complete like socialist disaster.
And more crime, more government. You need more government to protect you. More crime, and you need more taxes to pay for the government, to pay for these government infrastructures, as opposed to, you know, letting freedom reign, so to speak. So the question in the chat was about registration of firearms. That's another interesting one. Someone said registration leads to confiscation, and now we've seen that in a highly politicized, where everything is weaponized culture, registration can also lead to political exploitation. It's anyhow.
So let me kind of, this is a question I've been wanting to ask for a little while, but we keep getting onto very interesting topics. But you know, we brought up already a few times the concept of politics being downstream of culture. And you know, another question I get repeatedly in my comments box, and people were like, how did we get to the point that we are in Canada today? You don't have to go back too far to see. I mean, I'm 42 years old. I remember a vastly different Canada when I was growing up. I mean, literally a different country. Like it's unrecognizable. If you had, you know, if I'd been in a coma from 2000 or from say 2010 until now, I would have thought I woke up in a foreign country, not in the country that I've been living in for the first 30 years of my life. So I'm interested in each of your thoughts of, it's a huge topic, but maybe just a couple of points from your perspective of things you've seen in your life or your careers of what do you think are some key things that have led to us getting as a society from where we were, the Canada that I think a lot of people would have a mental image of, to where we are now. So Maxime, maybe I'll throw that one at you first.
Yeah, I believe that a part of that is the influence of the government. You know, we were more freer. I understand that in the 1960s, 1970s, we had a government in Ottawa that was very small, respecting the Constitution, not interfering in provincial jurisdiction. You had more freedom at that time. And now, you know, when you have bigger government, usually the government will create new programs and will give you more money. So when you have more people that are depending on the government for money, for a kind of a salary, you know, these people will ask for a bigger government, will ask for more programs, and that's what is happening right now. You have a part of the population that, you know, are, if you look at the civil servants, if you look at the people on the different programs, you have a lot of regulations against free enterprise that are It's very difficult right now to start a business. If you look at 20 years ago, it was easier. Now there's a lot of regulations at the municipal, provincial, and federal level. So you had all these regulations, all that government, these taxes. So you have a new kind of mentality that the government knows better than you, and we must listen to the government, and we are asking the government always for more and more, thinking that everything is free, but there's nothing like a free lunch. Now we know we have inflation at 6.7%. That's the official rate. The real one must be at 10% today. We are paying for that. We are losing our purchasing power. So more government, they believe that, when the government is giving money to you, it's a benefit. But right now it is not. Maybe you had that benefit during the COVID-19 hysteria with all these programs, but we are paying for that. So the mentality, when you have a population that is more dependent on the government and asking for always more government, that's a big changes. That's why we believe in people. We have faith in people. We have faith that you have the ability to do what you want to do in life. You have the ability, the dignity, and the right to make your own decision as a citizen, to make your own decision for your life. But when you speak like that, it's not popular because people are used to have free stuff from the government. And you're right, I agree with you. We don't have the same country that we had 30 years ago.
Is there anything that you've seen in your career in politics, or one particular piece of legislation that you would say that's the turning point when we started heading towards the direction we're in now? Or has it just been a gradual, like death by 1,000 cuts of this little thing here and this little thing there?
No, I believe it was gradual, a little bit more program. Usually in Quebec, for example, you had a very strong autonomous Quebec government under Robert Bourassa or under René Lévesque. And when the federal government was interfering in provincial jurisdiction, these nationalist politicians in Quebec were fighting for their rights, were fighting for their provincial jurisdiction. Now you have a government that is saying, I want to implement a new program in healthcare, daycare, dental care, health care, that it's 100% provincial jurisdiction, and you don't have any provincial government that is speaking against that. In the past, you had provincial governments say, hey, no, we don't want that. It's under our jurisdiction. We will manage that. I don't want you to tell us what to do. But now the difference is we don't have any provincial government that is saying, no, they want the money, but they don't want any conditions. But in the end, they will always have conditions when the federal government is giving money to provinces. So I believe that it was step by step, and now that's what we have. We have a government that is spending money that we don't have, creating inflation and adding more oil on the inflationary fire. With more spending, and when you spend money that you don't have, the Bank of Canada will print money out of thin air, and when you have more money chasing fewer goods, you have inflation. When you have inflation, your purchasing power is going down, your standard of living is going down, everybody is poor, but the worst of that is it is the middle class and the poor that are paying more because they are spending a bigger part of their budget in transportation, food, and gas, and housing. So they are the one that, and people that receive a pension. I don't believe that the Canadian workers will have an increase of their paycheck at 6.7% this year. That's inflation. If your paycheck does not increase 6.7%, you are losing money. You are poor. And that's the sad reality.
And that's assuming the inflation rate is actually 6.7%. I think, they've changed the way that they calculate the inflation. In real terms, it's got to be more than that. Just when I look at, my grocery bill and my gas bill, they've gone up by more than 6.7% in the last month, let alone the last year.
And by the way,
Yeah, you're right, Nicholas, about that. And in the U.S., there's an economist that is doing the same, is using the same formula that they used in the 1980s to calculate inflation. And so if you use that formula, inflation in the US is at 17%, not 8.2%, 17%. Why? Because politicians don't like inflation, and they don't want their citizens to see that they're losing their purchasing power. So they changed the way that they calculated inflation. They did that in Canada. I'll give you an example. It's a basket of goods and services. So, and you have, you can have a steak in that basket of goods, and you look at the price of that, the evolution of the price of that. But they are playing with that basket. They are putting other kind of goods. So if in your basket you have steak, and the cost of the steak is increasing by 10% or by 20%, they will subsidize. They will change that. They will put maybe I don't know, a chicken, because they say, oh, people won't have money to buy a steak. It's too expensive. So people will buy other things like maybe chicken if it's less expensive. So we'll replace steak by chicken in the basket, and that's why you have lower inflation. So when something is going very high, and they will change that, they will say, oh, people won't buy that, it's too expensive. They will try to have a subsidies, and not a subsidies, a substitute, and they will buy that substitute. So that's why they change the formula, they change the basket of goods and services, and that's why the official rate of inflation is not the real one that you're paying every day.
Well, one thing good for the MPs. They got their 5% raise on April 1st. But producer, if you can see the Dennis Johnson chat, it's from a little while ago. It's got a little Facebook avatar on it, and it says, it's always been like that. I'm 57 years old. It's just been scratching the surface. It's always been a socialist country, just gotten to, and I think he means worse. The original question was, I'm 42 as well, Nicholas. I look back now, and living by one of Kierkegaard's expressions, life can only be understood backwards, but has to be lived forwards. I now look back at the beginning of my YouTube career when I thought we had free speech in Canada. This is 2016, 2017, and people were like, you don't have free speech in Canada. When Jordan Peterson was raising the alarm about Bill C-16. But you go right back to the Charter of Rights itself, and it's a beautiful document. It's beautiful in principle. It's beautiful because it's based virtually identically off the Constitution in the United States, which was several hundred years earlier than that. But it's virtually identical, save and except for the first article, which says this charter guarantees your rights and freedoms, except in as much as can be limited by law in a free and democratic society. That's Article 1. Then you got Article 33, which is the notwithstanding clause, which says you can violate some of your fundamental rights if you do it specifically by way of legislation, for a max of 5 years, yada, yada, yada. And there's certain rights you can't touch. So even to its inception, the Charter of Rights and Freedoms was more a recommendation, a guideline of privileges than a guarantee of rights. And we've seen them chiseled away slowly but surely over time. Article, the notwithstanding clause invoked, I think 4 or 5 times by various provinces. You got Bill 101. And then it just took off recently. But it took off, by and large because of international trends, especially American trends, where, the greater good trumps individual rights. And we have an infrastructure already in place that allows for the trumping of individual rights for the greater good because it's in the charter. And now it's, free and democratic society can lock you up in your home at 8 o'clock at night if they deem it to be for the greater good. So it's always been there, I think. I've now noticed it in retrospect, but it's been on steroids over the last 3 years.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, Dennis Johnson's point is interesting. I think he suggested that Canada's always been socialist. I don't know about always. I think it certainly has been for a while. I don't really know what the turning point is. But I mean, when you look back in history, there was a time when the Canadians considered themselves the really conservative ones and considered the Americans kind of the liberal weirdos that were doing all kinds of strange things. That role seems to have been reversed over time. I mean, my personal view is that, I mean, the seeds for a lot of things are deeply planted, and I think part of the reason why collectivism is becoming so popular and why it's become this modern trend. I mean, collectivism has been popular in the past if we look at Europe in the 1930s, but it seems to me that the breakdown of the family that's happened in North America, Western society over the last, I guess, 80 years now. The 1960s was when divorce was, like, no-fault divorce was legalized. I mean, there's always kind of a chicken and the egg question, what comes first. But I think the bottom line is families aren't as tightly knit together, so people can't rely on that family unit as much. So then it makes it a lot easier to now go to the government for that support, because you don't have the family, the extended family. You don't have the connection even to the community. Now, I mean, these things all interplay to each other, right? Because do people not talk to each other so much because they're watching TV instead, or do they watch TV instead because they're not talking to people as much? I think they all, they all kind of feed into each other. But that's where I look at it, going back of, this has been going on for a long time now. And as I've opined before, you're talking about Article 1 of the Charter, but before that, you get to the preamble that says that Canada is founded upon principles that recognize the supremacy of God and the rule of law. In my view, that had to become a dead letter of law before the rest of it could become a dead letter of law. And the whole Canada recognizing the supremacy of God, I think, has been a dead letter to the law for a long time. Because I remember even as a child, it was, the US was always kind of looked down upon because they would still, some of their politicians would still reference religious things, like, oh, but in Canada, we're more enlightened. Our government's much more secular. Anyway, that's my kind of my take, my philosophical take on it.
But also, Nicholas, we have right now the influence of international organizations like the UN, the World Economic Forum, and all these organizations are socialist, and they are promoting socialist ideology and woke ideology. So that has another influence and in our country, and we have a government that is 100% in line with that. So also that is putting pressure to more socialism in our country. That's why we are saying no to that as a political party. We want to keep our country sovereign and independent, and so we won't support the World Economic Forum. That's an organization that fight for values that are not our values. More government, more socialism. So that the last the last decade, I must say that these organizations had a huge influence in Canada. And so just with the pandemic, that look at what the World Health Organization was saying, and the Quebec government and other provincial governments and the federal government were taking their order from that organization. So that has, I believe, another impact on more government intervention and more socialism in our country.
Well, it certainly supports the idea that some of the Canadian politicians are, throwing Canada under the bus for international interests. So it's the WEF thing is very funny. Maxime, people have accused you of being WEF because someone who worked in the campaign was seen at a Davos conference. But it's shocking. Everybody out there, it's shocking. Just Google a politician with WEF and just see if they have a profile on the WEF website. I do appreciate it might be like a marketing thing for the WEF to like steal clout. Say, like, look at all the people on our websites. I just know if I ever see my face or profile on a WEF, they'll be getting a cease and desist immediately to pull it down. But no, it's an interesting thing that the international interests for the greater good, the PM of Canada seemingly representing international interests and not national interests. The day will come when it won't be cool and it won't be popular anymore to do this, to throw your country under the bus, like to quote Trump at the very risky thing, at the altar of international. I think he said at the altar of, what did he say? I forget. Someone in the chat's going to know what the exact quote was. But politicians I now understand the argument that they should not have dual citizenship. They should have loyalty to the country that they were elected to represent. And when you have these politicians, elected members of office, serving on international committees, UN, WEF, whatever it is, one could accuse them of representing international interests over national interests and looking to further themselves and their own careers internationally in these international bodies, as opposed to doing what they were elected to do, which is represent their own citizens.
Yeah, you're
Rant
absolutely
over.
right. And for me, I just want to say, yes, I was at one of the conference in 2008 when I was Foreign Affairs Minister under the Harper government, and I went there because it was efficient for me to meet. My goal was to have meetings with other Foreign Affairs ministers, my counterparts, and my goal was to ask them for help in Afghanistan. At that time, we were fighting in Afghanistan, and we needed some help from other countries. So all these foreign affairs ministers were there at the same time at that conference. So I decided to go, and I had a lot of meeting with my counterparts, but I did not assist to the conference. I was in Davos because the conference was there, and that was very easy for me to have a lot of meetings with my counterparts and asking them to help us in Afghanistan. And they did it. Some of them did it. And after that, I left. I did not assist at any meetings with the World Economic Forum. And if you look at their agenda and on their website, yes, there's a lot of politicians that share their values, but I'm not part of that, and I'm proud of it.
Well, and even I see some chats about Pierre Poilievre having been on it, and if he wasn't, I have a feeling it's something of not a Ponzi scheme, but like something of a scam. Just put people up, make the WEF look more prominent than it is. If Pierre Poilievre was on it and is no longer on it, that's a good sign, I think. Chrystia Freeland being on the board of trustees of the WEF, Jagmeet Singh being one of the young global leaders with Justin Trudeau, that's more concerning. And that's there in real time right now. And had you said this 2 years ago, people would have looked at you like you were a conspiracy theorist, when in reality, it's in front of your very faces. You just have to know it's there, and then you have to think about what it means politically.
Right.
Yeah, and you forget Michelle Rampol also. She's a young leader, and she's very proud to be part of the WEF.
Right. Well, I mean, I don't want to beat up on Michelle Rempel, but yeah. But I mean, she's just. I know she's very popular among some people who are big fans of the Conservative Party of Canada. I think because she likes firearms, but like just because you got a picture taken with you once upon a time shooting an AR-15, that doesn't mean you're conservative. And she seems pretty. I don't even know why she's a member. I mean, as non-conservative as the Conservative Party of Canada is, some of the things I see her come out with in support, I'm like, why is she even a member of the Conservative Party? It seems more liberal in terms of some of this woke stuff. And I know she was in. Anyway, I won't get into all that because it's almost 8 o'clock already. Time's flown. So thank you, gentlemen, both of you for joining me. You've made episode 100 of Don't Talk TV something really special, and it was a great conversation. I really enjoyed talking with both of you. I'm looking forward to returning the favor and appearing as a guest on each of your shows when you have need for a guest and a need for having a fellow racist and arch conservative and whatever other terminology.
I'm going to keep your number because I do plan on documenting the next event in Ottawa. So if I end up apprehended that day, maybe I'll give you a call.
Okay. Yeah, absolutely.
Touch wood. Hopefully.
So thank you both, you gentlemen. And of course, I have to say none of this video has been legal advice. So if you need a lawyer, you can call a lawyer. I am a lawyer. You can call me. The number is always on the website. And like, share, and subscribe if you enjoyed us. We probably had a lot of new viewers coming over from PPC sources and from Viva Frei. So if you liked some of what you heard, please like, share, and subscribe. And gentlemen, thank you once again. It's been great.
For me, Nicolas, it was political advice.
And for me, if you need a lawyer, don't call me because I'm not taking new files. Call Nicholas, call David Amber. But no, this was fun, Nicholas. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, Nicholas, and congratulations, Nicholas, for your 100 episode.
Thank you.
Oh yeah, okay.